She knew something was wrong the moment the lines of her reserve parachute twisted into impossible knots. But by then, she was already plummeting 4,000 feet toward what should have been her death.
I remember feeling scared, thinking this just isn't right. I couldn't understand why my husband would try and kill me.
Hi everyone, my name is Sophie, and today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. Victoria Cilliers was raised by her mother, Veronica, and father, Michael, just east of Edinburgh. But her privileged childhood, she attended the £17,000 a year Edinburgh Academy, was marked by tragedy when her mother developed cancer during Victoria's teenage years. As her mum battled the disease, 16-year-old Victoria did her first parachute jump for a cancer charity, an experience that would spark a lifelong passion for skydiving. At 22, she joined the Royal Army Medical Corps as a physiotherapy officer. Victoria served in a field hospital in Kosovo, rising to the rank of captain. Her military service was distinguished, but her personal life was more complicated. 4 years later, she married Captain Liam Fitzgerald Finch. Apparently, the couple spent a lot of their time apart, and Victoria had suspicions that her husband being unfaithful. She eventually walked out on the marriage. After her first marriage crumbled under the weight of distance and infidelity, the army physiotherapist thought love might have passed her by forever. At 29, she was focused on her career with the Ministry of Defence, treating soldiers who returned broken from deployments, piecing them back together one session at a time. Then, in the winter of 2009, everything changed. Emile Cilliers walked into Victoria's treatment centre, seeking help for a knee injury he'd sustained during an army skiing accident. He was a physical training instructor in the Royal Artillery, a sergeant who seemed to light up every room he entered. Victoria later described how his whole face would transform when he smiled, making her feel like the centre of his universe. After their first meeting, it didn't take long for the pair to strike up a relationship, though Victoria had no idea that Emile was still married to his first wife, Carly, with whom he had 2 children. When she eventually discovered this, Emile had a ready explanation. He had married Carly due to visa issues and was divorcing her. Love-bombed and completely swept off her feet, Victoria chose to believe him. I got to the point, in my early mid-30s, I'd been married, divorced with no kids, not quite knowing where life was going to go. Suddenly, this guy came out of nowhere. He just promised me everything I wanted. I thought I'd got my happy ending. It was perfect. In 2011, Emile and Victoria married in Cape Town, South Africa. The wedding was everything Victoria had dreamed of. A fresh start with a man who seemed devoted to building a life with her. Shortly after, they welcomed their first daughter, though Victoria suffered deeply from postnatal depression. To the outside world, they appeared to be the perfect military couple. Emile was charming, career-focused, and seemed completely devoted to his new wife. Victoria felt like she had finally found her fairy tale ending. But fairy tales, as Victoria would learn, can quickly become nightmares. By May 2013, the first warning signs appeared when Emile asked for money from Victoria. She transferred it into his bank account. When she questioned the request, he had a perfectly reasonable explanation about work mixing up his wages. Victoria wanted to trust her husband, so she did. 2 months later, Emile transferred £6,000 from Victoria's account into his own without her permission. He told her the account details had been hacked. Again, Victoria accepted his explanation. Looking back, she would realise this was the beginning of a pattern of financial manipulation that would only escalate. As their relationship developed, Emile's behaviour became increasingly worrying. He started to rack up debt and spend Victoria's money, relying on limp excuses such as claiming work had mixed up his wages. More disturbing still, he would often disappear for long periods of time, was accused by one of Victoria's friends of sending inappropriate messages to her 16-year-old daughter, and started receiving emails from a sex club, which Victoria discovered on the family computer. Victoria began finding condoms in their home and in Emil's car. There were mysterious messages from women on his phone. There were messages from sort of chats with women, saying he was going to visit them, something to do with a club. I can't remember the name of it, but essentially it's a sex club, Victoria would later tell police. But the most devastating revelation came when Carly dropped off Emil's children for a visit. She dropped a bombshell. "I assume you know about the other children," Victoria wrote in her book. Emil hadn't told Victoria that he had 2 older children from an earlier relationship with a woman named Nicolene in South Africa, as well as the 2 children with Carly. Victoria worried about Emil's lack of honesty, but she was trapped in a cycle of manipulation. Emil would show remorse, cook her meals, leave love notes around the house. Each time she considered leaving, he would pull her back in with promises and explanations. She had no idea that her husband's deception ran far deeper than she could imagine. Emil Cilliers was born in South Africa in 1980 to mother Zaan, a preschool teacher, and father Stoltz, an engineer. He was raised in Ermelo, a small farming and mining town, and attended an Afrikaans private school in what was described as a staunchly Christian household. His womanizing began early. Age 16, he was wooing 13-year-old Nicolene Shepherd, a fellow pupil at their local Afrikaans high school. Nicolene liked the fact that an older boy was interested in her. She describes him as being handsome and confident with an easy charm. He was charismatic and romantic. We used to go out for our monthly anniversary, and he would give me a long-stemmed rose every time. But even as a teenager, Emil showed signs of the manipulative behavior that would later define his relationships. His romanticism was what helped Nicolene overlook his womanizing. He loved ladies and cheated on her often, but she always let it go. When Nicolene was just 16, she gave birth to their first child, Celine, in June 2000. Emil proposed to Nicolene using his grandmother's diamond ring in a grandiose, characteristically romantic gesture designed to make her believe he was committed. But Nicolene put the engagement on hold when she found out he was cheating with her best friend. By the time daughter Celine was born, Emil was already in the UK, supporting himself with farm and bar work in Oxfordshire. When he returned to South Africa in 2002, they resumed their relationship, and Nicolene was soon pregnant with their second child, Trevor. It came as a devastating blow to Nicolene when, within the year, Emil's mother Zaan sat her down for a chat, announcing that he had married another woman, Carly Taylor. Emil had met Carly in an Oxford pub in 2001, and they married in 2003. While he was still promising Nicolene they would build a life together. Devastated, Nicolene came to Britain anyway in 2006, setting up home in Somerton, Somerset. When her daughter asked if she could meet her father, she contacted him. By then, he was living in Larkhill, Wiltshire, having joined the British Army. Emil responded immediately, claiming he was divorcing and had married to solve a visa problem. The pair resumed their relationship. It was a huge mistake. 4 weeks in, Emil was at work when the mobile he'd left behind by mistake rang and Nicolene answered. It was his wife, Carly. Nicolene recalled, "I said I understood she and Emil were separated, and of course she put me right." According to Nicolene, the women decided to confront Emil at his marital home. Nicolene remembered. His jaw hit the floor. He began speaking Afrikaans, knowing Carly wouldn't understand. He basically asked me, "What the fuck are you doing here?" Nicolene described the confrontation. Once he had got over the initial shock, he stood there looking between us, trying to play us off in his usual self-assured way. His next words were something to the effect of, "Well, here we are. Which one of you wants me?" Nicolene most certainly did not. Carly, with whom he had a son and daughter, persevered, but within 3 years their marriage broke down and they divorced. This pattern of manipulation and betrayal would repeat itself throughout Emil's life, leaving a trail of broken hearts and abandoned children in his wake. In November 2014, with Victoria about 6 months pregnant with their second child, Emil went to Austria for a month as part of the army ski team. He told Victoria it was mandatory training, but the truth was far more sinister. On the ski trip, Emil met Stephanie Goller, a 36-year-old skydiving instructor, through the dating app Tinder. He told Stephanie that his marriage was over, that Victoria had cheated and the child she was expecting wasn't even his. While Victoria sat at home, heavily pregnant and caring for their toddler, Emil was beginning an affair that would ultimately lead to his murderous plan. In December 2014, Emil spent a week with Stephanie in Berlin over New Year, telling Victoria he was there for work. The reality was far more expensive and devastating. He took Stephanie to stay at a spa, over $700 per night, in Berlin, funding this betrayal with money he'd borrowed from his wife. Around the same time, a debt collector showed up at Victoria and Emil's home. He had been using a loan shark, and they were there now to intimidate him and his pregnant wife. Or, Victoria knew Emil had debt. She had even lent him £19,000 to help pay it off, but she had no idea he was using her money to finance his affairs. In February 2015, Stephanie stayed with Emil at his barracks in Aldershot for a week, including on Valentine's Day. Victoria had just given birth to their son, and her husband was spending the most romantic day of the year with another woman. The investigation would later reveal the full scope of Emil's deception. Reviews of alleged encounters which Emil posted on Fab Swingers appear to show he was cheating on his wife throughout their 6-year marriage. He also used prostitutes. The man Victoria thought she knew was living an entirely separate life. In January 2015, in text messages to Stephanie, Emil wrote that, "From April onwards I can do random and spontaneous." He also told her his marriage to Victoria had been a stupid mistake which he regretted every day. Those words would prove to be more prophetic than anyone could have imagined. On March 29, 2015, Emil was deep in his long-distance love affair with Stephanie, whom he would meet up with occasionally for rendezvous. But keen for a closer illicit hookup while they were apart, Emil texted his ex-wife Carly to arrange a meet-up for sex. He told Victoria he needed to stay at the army barracks for the evening, but before he left their family home, Emil went into the kitchen with a pair of pliers and a wrench. He opened the top nut on the gas valve in the kitchen of the home he and Victoria shared. Using pliers and a wrench, the adulterous husband loosened the nut on the top nut of the gas valve in their kitchen before leaving for his barracks on the evening. With their 2 young children sleeping upstairs, Emil was willing to risk all their lives for his freedom. The next day, Victoria noticed an odd smell coming from the kitchen. She quickly realized there was something wrong and called her husband. In a chilling phone call, Emil instructed her to turn the gas on. However, trusting her gut instinct, Victoria decided against it. Victoria Cilliers joked in a text to her husband, "Are you trying to bump me off?" It turned out he was. The decision saved her life and scuppered her husband's first attempt at murdering his wife. Thankfully, Victoria realized there was a leak before succumbing to the gas. But Emil wasn't finished. If anything, the failed gas leak only made him more determined to find another way. The clock was ticking, and Victoria had no idea that her husband had already decided she had to die. After the gas leak incident, Emil appeared to make an effort to repair their strained relationship. He suggested they spend Easter weekend together as a family, and he had the perfect gift for Victoria: a skydiving session. Victoria saw the gift as an opportunity to turn over a new leaf. She was an experienced skydiver and instructor with 2,654 jumps to her name. After taking time off for the birth of their second child, she was excited to get back in the air. The couple went to Netheravon Airfield together on April 4th, 2015, the day before Easter, for the jump, which was called off due to bad weather. It seemed like a disappointment, but Emil had a solution. Instead of returning his wife's parachutes to the store where they rented them, Emil stashed them in the couple's locker at the airfield so Victoria could use it the following day. He told her they could try again on Easter Sunday. What Victoria didn't know was that Emil had already taken her parachute equipment into the bathroom. On April 4th, 2015, Army Sergeant Emil Cilliers took his wife Victoria's parachute rig into the toilets of Netheravon Airfield and sabotaged it. The trial heard that a sabotage demonstration showed it could be done in a toilet cubicle in just over 5 minutes. Emil knew exactly what he was doing. Prosecutors said that the defendant twisted the lines of the main chute to prevent it from opening, and also removed parts from the reserve chute. This type of sabotage required specialized knowledge. Only someone intimately familiar with parachute packing procedures would understand where to find these components and recognize that their removal would cause catastrophic failure. The technical nature of the tampering immediately suggested this was not a random equipment failure. When the weather was still not cooperating the next morning, they opted to do a hop and pop in the afternoon. This involved jumping from a lower altitude and opening the parachute almost immediately. Victoria testified at her husband's trial that she returned, alone, to the airfield on Easter Sunday. Her excitement for the jump was gone, but her husband encouraged her to go through with it. Victoria testified, "I remember the pilot giving me a smile as I went out." Those would be the last normal moments of Victoria's life. As an avid skydiver, the jump should have been easy for Victoria. She had completed over 2,000 skydives before. This was supposed to be routine. The aircraft climbed to 4,000 feet above the Wiltshire countryside on that Easter Sunday afternoon. Victoria made the leap. It was only when her standard parachute failed that she realized something was drastically wrong. With her extensive training, she knew malfunctions could happen. Her survival instincts kicked in immediately. She deployed her reserve parachute and watched in horror as it also failed to open properly. Now she was in complete free fall, reaching speeds of 60 miles per hour as the ground rushed toward her with terrifying speed. Victoria later described the terrifying moment. "I remember feeling tearful, feeling scared, thinking this just isn't right." Victoria didn't have time to consider that she might die. Her training took over as she fought to control her descent, trying desperately to slow her fall with whatever remained of her malfunctioning equipment. The impact was devastating. Victoria sustained life-threatening injuries: a broken pelvis, fractured ribs, a fractured spine, and a collapsed lung. Those who saw the fall were so convinced she had died that they brought a body bag to the scene, but the ground was mercifully soft due to recent ploughing. When the first responder reached her, he saw that the lines on one side of her parachute were in knots. He soon realized the soft links, or slinks, that connect the harness to the parachute were absent. But Victoria had survived what should have been impossible. As she lay broken in that field, she had no idea that the man she loved, the father of her children, had just tried to murder her. And this wasn't even his first attempt. Regaining consciousness, having miraculously survived a 4,000-foot fall, Victoria opened her eyes to see her husband Emil beside her hospital bed. She whispered to him, "I love you." He did not reply. In the coming days, as she recovered from her devastating injuries, his visits would be infrequent and cold. Victoria would recall, His bosses gave him immediate compassionate leave. But he still kept going to work. It's lonely in hospital. When he came in, he did not really seem interested. He never brought me presents or cards. One day, he brought in insurance paperwork and said to Victoria, "You should sign this because we need to get the ball rolling on a personal injury claim." Victoria remembered thinking, "It's a little harsh when I'm lying here." But what Victoria didn't know was that even as he sat beside her hospital bed, Emile was busy on his phone making plans with his girlfriend. Emile lied in a WhatsApp message, "We are separated. Legally. We split up as a trial around September after I found she cheated on me and kept the pregnancy from me for about 3 months. She had the baby, took the test, she told me it's not mine. Please just be reassured I am all yours. Nothing will change that." It was sheer invention, and would later be used as evidence against him. Initially, police had no reason to suspect foul play. Officers had no reason to suspect foul play in what appeared to be a tragic skydiving accident. But that changed when a friend of Victoria's approached the detectives with concerns about Victoria's relationship with her husband Emile. The friend expressed doubts about the couple's seemingly perfect marriage, and suggested that if Emile had been near the parachute center during the incident, they should consider him a suspect. This tip proved remarkably accurate. Emile had indeed been at the skydiving facility on that Easter Sunday in 2015. Witnesses confirmed seeing him carrying Victoria's skydiving equipment after taking their infant daughter to the toilet, a crucial detail that would later become significant in the case. The parachute expert stated it had been looked at 16 times by 10 different advance packers over its lifetime, most recently 2 months before Easter Sunday, and each time the slinks were there. The British Parachute Association's investigation revealed something chilling. Both Victoria's main parachute and her reserve chute had both been sabotaged. Critical safety components called slinks had been completely removed from Victoria's equipment. This wasn't an accident. It was attempted murder. 4 weeks after the fall, on April the 28th, 2015, Emile Cilliers was arrested on suspicion of murder over the sabotaged parachute and was interviewed at Guildford Police Station. He denied committing any crime, but as detectives dug deeper into Emile's life, they uncovered a web of lies, debts, and betrayals that painted a very different picture of the devoted husband. The truth was about to come out, and it was worse than anyone had imagined, even Victoria herself. During the investigation, police discovered the full extent of Emile's double life. Police investigated the incident and uncovered Emile's hidden life, revealing multiple affairs, debts, sex clubs, and murderous intentions, as well as coercive control over Victoria. The investigation revealed Emile's double life. He confessed to maintaining an affair with a woman named Stephanie Goller, whom he'd met on a ski trip. Additionally, he admitted to regularly visiting sex workers, using dating apps, and frequenting swinging clubs. Reviews of alleged encounters, which Emile posted on Fab Swingers, appear to show he was cheating on his wife throughout their 6-year marriage. But the most disturbing revelations came from his activities at a now-closed sex club run by Ricky Harwood in Salisbury. According to court testimony and police evidence, Emile had been a regular visitor while married to Victoria, engaging in increasingly extreme sexual behaviours that painted a picture of a man completely out of control. Emile was also in contact with a number of prostitutes, even making arrangements by text to film himself having unprotected sex with one woman. All of this was happening while Victoria was at home, caring for their children and working multiple jobs to support their family. Evidence was presented that showed Emile was £20,000 in debt. He had been hoping to claim a £120,000 life insurance payout from his wife's accidental death in order to clear his financial woes and start a new life with Stephanie. The motive was becoming crystal clear. Emil wanted his wife dead so he could collect her life insurance and start fresh with his mistress. But the investigation also revealed something else. In September 2015, Emil was arrested on suspicion of murder again, this time over the gas leak at his home. Police had connected the dots between the two incidents, realizing that Victoria had survived not one, but 2 murder attempts in the same week. What emerged was a picture of a man who had systematically deceived everyone in his life. Detective Inspector Paul Franklin and his team spent 2 years pulling at the threads of Emil's existence, building what they described as a compelling picture of a sociopathic narcissist who groomed and exploited everyone in his life. The investigation revealed that Emil was a father to 6 children with multiple women, including 2 with Nicolene in South Africa, 2 with Carly, and 2 with Victoria. Each woman had been promised a future, each had been manipulated and controlled, and each had been discarded when Emil moved on to his next victim. What made this case even more complex was Victoria's reaction to the investigation. Despite overwhelming evidence, she defended her husband. Victoria defended her husband during the subsequent investigation and visited him in prison as a result of the coercive control he exerted in their relationship. Victoria later explained, "I didn't know truth or reality from what was false. I felt like a prisoner in my own home and in my own head. I said, I want you to drop the case so we can move on with our lives. I wanted my husband back." Victoria's behaviour demonstrated the insidious nature of coercive control. Even after nearly dying, she couldn't accept that the man she loved had tried to kill her. Victoria admitted, "I couldn't compute that someone I'd married, who said he loved me, could take my life away from me." In October 2017, the trial began at Winchester Crown Court, but the jury was discharged after 7 weeks when they couldn't reach a verdict. Victoria's defense of her husband and the complex psychological dynamics of the case had created reasonable doubt, but prosecutors weren't giving up. In May 2018, after a second trial, Emil Cilliers was found guilty of 2 counts of attempted murder and was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 18 years. During his court case, Emil showed very little emotion and accused Victoria of trying to kill herself, and suggested a random killer had attempted to take her life. Detective Inspector Paul Franklin described Emil as showing no remorse for what he had done. He lied all the way through 2 trials, but in the end, justice won out with the guilty verdicts, and now a long prison sentence.